Jenny Ervine, the co-founder of Race Ventures, an experienced early-stage investor and advisor with a passion for marketing and business strategy. Jenny is a force of nature in the early-stage tech sector and is the ultimate go-to person for building foundations that last with investors and customers so they can grow and scale. Not only that, but Jenny has a story that will inspire any entrepreneur to get out of bed every morning to make their dreams come true. This is the Mary Poppins of Startups podcast, the Angel Investor series. And, well, let the show begin. Jenny, welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startup Live show. And I'm really, really excited about having our conversation. This is something that's been on the back of my mind for a while. And I'm glad that you can finally be here, tell us about Race Ventures, and also help startups out there that are looking for funding, especially from angel investors and looking for accelerators. Give them some pointers on where to go and what to watch out for. But to start with, can you please give us a bit more, a short introduction on Race Ventures, just for those who haven't had the pleasure as I have to find out more about Race Ventures.
Thanks, Neely, so much for having me today. It's great to catch up. I know that we talked to lots of different startups in our roles and we come across similar problems. So that's really what the discussion is about today. And it's one of the reasons working with startups is why that we started Race Ventures. So Race Ventures is an early stage startup accelerator. We help early stage tech startups through that journey of building their technical solution, taking it to market, validating it with their customers, selling it to their customers, getting good traction, and thinking about early stage investment and that early stage angel kind of pre-seed round. So that's what we do through our program. And we started it 3 years ago because we were seeing some really sort of interesting startup pitches in the network, but maybe when you start to dig underneath the hood of what actually the value of that business was and did they really understand the business model, the substance just wasn't there. And the program kind of helps build those really good business foundations. So that's what we do. And alongside kind of the work we do at Race Ventures, I'm an angel investor and have been for the past over 10 years and kind of have an idea of working with startups to look for investment, and then as an investor looking at what we need to kind of refine from an investment perspective for startups.
Yeah, one of the things that you've mentioned there is that when you've seen a lot of pitches and when you worked a lot with some of the startups at the beginning, it's really difficult to understand. They might have a good idea, but they understand their business model. There's a lot of startups that, whenever you watch TV and shows about startups, it's always about this gang-ho thing. We're going to build this thing overnight and there's overnight success. But movies don't really show the different stages. So what can startups do to get investment ready, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I always say early stage sounds quite small, but it's actually quite big, and it can take anything from a year to 2 or 3 years to actually turn your idea into business to get that kind of technical product ready. And that's quite often industry founders working with technical partners to get that ready. Maybe it could be a friend, or it could be a dev house, or it could be a developer working in the network to develop that technical product. And they've seen the problem they're trying to solve in their industry and they're working to build that. Or it's a technical founder that's come up with a really great technical solution and they're taking it out to industry and looking for industry founders to take it to market. So we see both coming to us at that earliest stage, kind of building the technical product. They know it's got the right features, they know it's going to solve a problem, but actually kind of taking it to the customer is one of the hardest things to do, getting that feedback from people that maybe don't know them, want to use it. They want it to be nice and shiny and do all the things to solve all their problems, but the typical MVP maybe only solves one of those problems and the additional features will come later. So it's bringing those customers on that journey and showcasing that customers will be willing to pay something for this MVP. And at that point, that's when investors, early stage angel investors and early stage funds are interested. And the reason they're interested is because it's a good team, it's a good product, it's a good market opportunity, and they really need to understand that business model as well as how they're going to scale it beyond kind of the first 10 customers, first 100 customers, and scale it either geographically or, industry across different industries, and understand the market opportunity, because essentially investing is giving away a portion equity of their company in exchange for money that hopefully that valuation that they set today will rise, and they'll exit to maybe a fund or exit to an acquisition at a higher valuation, and there'll be a return on that investment. So it's high risk and can be high reward, but it's a long journey. And those overnight successes, we were talking about this actually this morning in the office. You see them and you think the overnight successes, but there's been a couple of years of work have been done in the background, before they actually launch and people know about them, and they become a topic for a dinner conversation.
Yes, that's true. And when you talk about this idea of you should already have some kind of products out there that clients can use. One of the struggles that many startups face is the balance of how far do I go with an MVP of a prototype, because on one hand you want to have something because otherwise other people will struggle to conceptualize what you are doing. On the other hand, it's not finished. There's going to be holes. There's a lot of workarounds. And when you work with clients, they might be expecting way more. When you start working with a company, are there any kind of red flags that you see in the way that they've built their product, or that might tell you, maybe this is way too advanced for what I want to invest in, or this is way too early for what I want to invest in?
I mean, there's a real debate at the moment about in-house building with somebody who's sitting right beside you, and outsourcing, as well as no code. So a couple of things we can touch on. No code's really good to get products up and running, to kind of get the customers to use it and get that quick iteration and feedback, but it might not be able to scale. The in-house and outsource conversation, I think it depends on the company and who you know as a founder. If you have somebody in your network that you can bring in and help you build that product in-house, fantastic, because it's easier sometimes to monitor and measure and project manage. But quite often the development houses have the skills, and maybe not just one software developer. They have maybe a range of kind of services there in terms of front end and back end. So the development houses can be an option as well. But I guess from an investor perspective, what you're really doing is looking at that tech stack, making sure that it's a modern tech stack that can be, if it is built by somebody, easily passed over to somebody else for whatever reason. Maybe they've gone back to their day job, or the dev house has got other projects on board and you need to bring it in-house. So what you're sense checking from a technical point of view is that it's a really good, solid tech stack, that it's been well built, well documented, and well understood by the founder, so that they can become technically literate when they're talking to the investor and making sure that they understand what they're doing.
Yeah, and I guess this is really a nice, an interesting conversation, because this is something that's been running a lot. I was at the conference, South Summit, which is one of the conferences in Madrid. I was speaking there, and one of the topics that came up a lot, you kind of nailed it, is the 3 points, the no code, the in-house, and the outsourced. I've heard that, during that panel, there was a lot of discussion that some people said that they will not consider investing if a startup doesn't have a team in-house. And by team, I'm not just the founding team, but the people building the products and the designers are not in-house. They won't even consider investing at all. What are your views on that?
Yeah, I think it does depend on investor appetite, and the risk is a lot higher if it's outsourced, and you need to have somebody who understands that product management piece and technical. So maybe a technical advisor. Doesn't necessarily need to be a CTO, because a CTO can be very costly, but a technical advisor up at a board level can help look at the longer term strategy. If it's outsourced maybe now for the next year, 2 years, starting to look for investment to hire maybe 1 or 2 in-house teams and bridge that gap of knowledge between in-house and outsource. So we've seen some interesting models of good in-house technical talent, but then managing maybe more the kind of junior roles outside that are just doing the work and delivering the work. So you're leading from in-house, and your external arm is delivering the work. So I think it comes down to individual investor appetite, but as the company scales and grows, and you're looking for technical debt and scalability, there has to be a point that some of it has to come into the company and be managed in-house. But every investor is different.
Yeah. And again, the aspect of the no code as well is very interesting. There's so many non-tech founders out there that now have the possibility of testing a prototype and getting early customers interested in using no code technology. But I guess it's really about, as you mentioned, how is it going to scale? So do you have any advice when you work with startups that have started based on the no code? Is there any advice that you give them to start thinking about the future and how they become even more attractive to angel investors for the future if they start with a no-code platform?
Yeah, I mean, no code can bring designs together, can bring functionality together, can get customers to use a clickable product and get data from A to B, and it's really useful to validate, right, here's the journey I want the customers to go on. Does this make sense? Get customers to use it and what value they're getting at the other side, and nearly use it as an experiment for maybe a period of time, maybe 3 or 6 months, to experiment with the customer and understand, right, if we actually go to code this, then how much is it going to be? And it better informs your spec, I suppose, your technical spec, in terms of talking to whoever's going to build it. This is really what I want to build, because we've learned from the customer that we wanted these 3 buttons in this place, but actually they don't touch that 3rd button, so let's not build that. I mean, that's at its basic level. So actually using the no code as a learning experiment, and then actually going to building a much better product on the other side. But I think it probably at this stage should be only an experiment. We work very much with early stage companies, so it's a good question to find out if there's very many later stage companies still using no code. I don't have the answer to that right now.
Yeah. The other challenge, and one of the questions that I get a lot from startups founders, is I won't say the fear, but sometimes there is this thought that if you are a solo founder, obviously it becomes much more difficult for you to get funding, even if you have a strong founding team. What are your views when it comes to solo founders versus co-founders? Is there anything where you lean more towards one types of founders than the other?
I think there's a good analogy we've talked about within our Raise Ventures team. You need somebody that's a leather jacket, and you need somebody that's in the suit, somebody that's the creative and the visionary, and somebody that's the suit and the operations that can actually deliver. That doesn't often happen straight out of the blocks. Quite often it's a journey, a solo founder that's going on a journey and recognises that they need maybe a bit of support, and they can get that through their network. If they identify, we do quite a lot of work on identifying the skill set of the CEO. Are they commercially minded or are they tech minded? And therefore, what are the gaps they're looking for? And thinking in their network, who do they potentially have that they can reach out to from an advisory perspective, first of all, and then who in their network, if they want a co-founder or they want, a second in command to come on and help them, can they start building those relationships with now, showcasing the opportunity and thinking about how that person can join the company, because it can be challenging early on, particularly from a salary perspective, to attract talent. And even for co-founders to join teams. Again, they might be in their own jobs, they might be doing other things. How do they bring that knowledge and expertise into the company? And that's a relationship piece where if they start early and identify the gaps and work the network, I think over time they can start to build that team. It doesn't necessarily have to be a co-founder, but it's just filling the gaps of industry, technology, and even right down to finance, sales and marketing. And as that journey evolves, then layering on top the investment piece, then you actually are, once you receive investment, are able to build out that team a lot quicker because you can afford it. But early on, it can be a negotiation on how much time they're going to spend, how do you remunerate them, and what are they going to deliver as well, from if it's advisory or co-founder, or somebody's going to come in maybe on a project basis, and what a company needs right now to deliver, as you say, an MVP might look very different to what they need to actually take it to market. So there's certain skills you need at certain stages.
Yeah, that's true. And I think sometimes the emphasis is on the solo founders, and I think that's one of the things that I find a lot frustrating on when you go on Twitter. There's a lot of messages that really send. I think it probably put a lot of stress on the solo founders, kind of saying that solo founders might not be able to succeed for X, Y, Z reason. But I believe, just as you've nicely put it, it's really about not just the founder, the solo founder, the co-founder, but how they've managed to build the support around them. And my favorite question is about the technical founders and non-technical founders. Is there any common mistakes that you've seen when you've had, let's have a technical founders, you've had technical founders come and knock on your door for angel investment? Is there any kind of glaring mistakes or gaps that you see straight away that you might point them to, maybe if they might not be ready to join you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the technical founder have fantastic skill set that they can, see a problem and they can sit down and code it and build it straight away, which is fantastic. I suppose the challenges that we're seeing is that they want to keep building. You mentioned it earlier, when is the perfect product ready to take it out to market, and let's just build this feature, and maybe they think that this feature is going to be really useful, but they haven't sense checked it with the wider customer market. So it's really important for the technical founder to build the essential MVP and get it out to market and validate it and use the feedback to then improve on those features rather than what they think. And I said the second thing we would see is sometimes it can be very detailed. So when I talked about those pitches that we would have seen before we started Raise, the technical founder would get up and spend, if it's a 5-minute pitch, maybe 3 of those minutes talking about the technology and why it's fantastic. And actually, it maybe only should be 1 or 2 minutes on the technology and the rest should be on the commercial opportunity. So really refining down the technical jargon into simplicity, because the angel network aren't all technical and they'll not be able to understand what the opportunity is unless you simplify it and paint the commercial end of this fantastic technology, but what problem does it solve and why are people going to buy it? So those are the 2 things that we would probably see from a technical founder, and it's fantastic to have them. And it's just moving them into the commercial kind of view and making it a real business.
Yeah, and even when you talked about the pitch, that's something I've noticed as well. There's a lot of technical founder that will, because of course, I'm from a technical background, so I fall in love with technology. And as you said, when you speak to investors or when you're approaching a broad range of people, you can't just assume that they will understand absolutely everything technical, and also the business model is also very important. And I would even add that this could also be a mistake when they approach customers and they struggle to land the sales because they focus so much on how technology can deliver this, but they might not think about how to solve not the problem, the gap of the technology, but the end-to-end solution and taking the pain away from customers. Is that something that you've also seen when you're working with technical founders?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the demo is the prime example of that. When the technical founders may be running through the demo, they're running through all the different features that they've built and they're so proud of and are actually really, really useful. But maybe it's better to stop and say, right, well, what's the problem that you're having right now? Is it this problem? Well, this part of the product will fix that and come back to the other parts of the product as and when. Because when customers are adopting new products, it can take a lot of mind space and they can't I suppose understand all about the product straight away, and they want to maybe come in and play about with the new product and understand moving from one process to a new process. And if any founder, whether it be industry or technical founder, can explain this, right, get started on board, this is the one thing that you can do that's really going to help you today using our product, and then here's the rest of the features. We'll open those up nearly and talk about those through the onboarding process, and that might take a month or 2 or 3 months depending on what the product does. And I think that kind of relationship building piece of working with customers, I mean, some products are very, very simple and they can get up and running quite quickly, but the more in-depth products that take a lot of information and do a lot of insights and solve a lot of problems, moving data from A to B, it can take a bit of learning from the customer's end. So I think it's really important for the technical founders and the industry founders to just step the customer through it the way you would step an investor through it and just keep it really simple.
Yeah, I agree. The hand-holding piece for customers, especially if they are already interested in your product, will take them a long way rather than trying to polish and over-polish the demo or create even a new demo. This is something that I always try to push hard when I work with a startup is, if you're very technical, try to put yourself in the shoes of someone who is not technical and you're coming in a business and saying, I'm going to change all of that. There's a moment where they're gonna go like, okay, change is coming. I know I need this change, but how do you help them kind of catch their breath again, right? That's how I like to say that. if we now look at it from the other perspective, the non-technical founder, what kind of mistakes or issues that you see a lot when you are starting to work or evaluating non-technical founders from an investment perspective?
Quite often they've been in the industry, they understand that the problem they're trying to solve, and maybe as operators, I suppose they kind of understand if they build this technical solution, they'll have a market that they're going to sell it in. But I suppose one of the biggest challenges we've seen is actually stepping up maybe into the CEO role and into more of a leadership role at an operations level. They're maybe quite used to being the salesperson or the operations person and dealing nearly in a two-way street. Whereas moving up into the CEO and leadership role, you wear a lot more hats and just kind of, it's a different type of a role, and you're not just doing the operations and buying and selling, you're maybe doing the admin and the finance and the technical side. So it's a bit of a step up into leadership, and I think that's maybe part of what we do in the program, is just trying to get them to manage those skill sets and develop those skill sets further so they can be the best CEO. And even, I guess, it's not a downfall from the commercial or industry founders, but they do need to learn a wee bit about 10% of the technical side of things if they're not the experts, and be working with their technical team on a regular basis, so that when an investor comes and asks questions, they should be able to answer at least the 10% that's important. And if there's more kind of due diligence and more kind of in-depth questions need to be asked, bringing in the technical team into those conversations. Interestingly, there was one, probably more of a scale up, I met at an event a couple of weeks ago, and he said 9 out of 10 meetings as a CTO, he gets pulled in and never really get asked any questions. And the 1 out of 10 that he gets asked all the questions, they're really hard questions. So it's interesting to hear that from the CTO of a scale up, that, quite often the CEO can answer those technical questions, but they need to have them there as a backup from a due diligence perspective. So I guess just a learning piece and being able to wear all those hats, and being able to answer all the questions about the business. You need to know it inside out and upside down from when you're thinking about investment.
Yeah, it does seems like a lot of work, but I completely agree with you, especially if you have a great team and the structure is set up the right way, and doing this little bit of learning on the side will give you not just the confidence when you're speaking to your team, they know you understand, even if you're not the expert, but you understand them, but as well the confidence when it comes to the investors, because as a founder and investor relationship is something that's very close. The last thing an investor wants to hear is having a founder that doesn't really understand what's happening in his own house.
Yeah, that's it exactly.
Have you ever seen a startup, of course, without naming anybody here, but you've ever been approached by a startup and straight from the go, you're like, no, I don't even want to spend any time on this. They're not ready at all.
Yes, I mean, we know we're 3 years into the program, and there's always one or two that would come and chat to us about this fantastic idea and this fantastic opportunity, and they've maybe experienced it themselves, but they maybe don't have industry experience or technical experience, so they don't have either. Then it's a real challenge to actually say, well, how do you find the team to build this, and how do you know when you build it there's going to be an industry in a market to buy it? So we have seen a few of those that maybe it's a solution that, I don't know, for example, in the children's industry, that they've got children and they want to make something that's going to really make their children's lives better, but they've never worked in the children's industry, whether that be technical software for children, education, or whether that be a physical product. So how do they know that when they build this, that they're going to be able to sell it? So selling into those markets can be really challenging, particularly in education, schools and universities with budgets. And similarly, in the health tech side of things, a lot of people maybe might spin out from having a medical background, but then how do they sell into the NHS or sell into the private health or sell into the care homes? The business model they may never have seen, but they may have worked there, in a big, large organization in the health sector, but they may never have bought and sold and understand the business relationship. So I think it's really important from accelerator and investor perspective to really dig into what that experience is, and do they know when they build this thing how they're going to sell it, and who's going to be their first buyer, and what does the buying cycle looks like, because it can take quite a long time, and particularly if it's a large product you're selling into one of those big corporates or big public sector, trying to find the right stakeholders and find the right buyers. It might be a really good problem that you're solving, but getting the buy-in and getting somebody to pay for it is a whole different journey. So I suppose that's one of the biggest challenges we would see, is people coming up with great ideas, but maybe just not knowing how to get it across the line from somebody wanting to pay for it. It's the idea and paying for it are here, and how do you bridge the gap?
Yes, and the more there's this feeling of desperation because time is running out or money is running out, sometimes really affects the emotional aspect of founders, and also the realistic view of, as you said, the buying journey, right? So how long it takes to land a sale. You might want it in 2 months, but if it's a B2B, then you need to be prepared that it might drag on a lot longer than you have. Now, thanks so much for, everything that you said so far, because I'm definitely going to spend the time to kind of create an even blog for that and put it on our website, because I think there's a lot of great things that you've mentioned for any startups out there that might feel like, yes, we want to be investor, we want to start approaching angel investors, especially if we are early stage, but we're a bit lost in terms of what to do. And for those who are maybe entrepreneur, bootstrapping on their way in, they also kind of know what to bear in mind if they are technical and non-technical.